Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we're going to be talking about The Last Jedi, which apparently nobody on the internet's ever talked about before. Yeah, so this movie's already 5 years old. This came out in 2017. It is... Oh, didn't even hit the thing yet. There we go. I chose my background color to match that, and I realized, oh, I didn't even select the thing. Because I set this up literally as the credits were rolling. I do my reviews right after the movie finishes. Although the one thing I've done differently this time is I've actually taken notes because I have so many opinions. I have so many thoughts about this film, and I feel like this one might go on forever. Because it's not the kind of thing that I can just sort of out like a, hey, sharks, you know. If you saw yesterday's video and you saw my reaction to this being selected, and if you're new to this whole thing, at the end of every video, there's a randomization thing, an app that selects a random number from the list of all the things I have that are on Disney Plus that I haven't watched yet, and it picks a number and it correlates to a spreadsheet, and that number gives me a movie or a TV show or a short or whatever to watch that is on Disney Plus. Well, this was chosen, and you should see my reaction because I wasn't ready for this just yet, because I'm at a really busy point right now, and I'm a little bit exhausted. So I'm going to do my best not to ramble too much. I think I've already ruined that. So anyway, I'm going to try to be as non-toxic about this as possible, because that is 90% of the videos that are out there that talk about The Last Jedi. Because there was a time 5 years ago and well beyond that, and this is a cynical part of me, people really knew that saying something against Star Wars, especially if it was misogynistic, or just shitty. If they could just be awful, that it would trigger people enough to comment or like or dislike or whatever it is, it would get a reaction. I'm not here to do that. If you don't like what I have to say, I don't care. If you don't comment, fine. If you comment and you don't like what I say, fine. It has no bearing on reality. It's a movie. And I'm saying that as a lifelong Star Wars fan. I was there with the original trilogy. Despite my youthful looks, I was there and saw it in 1977. I am an original trilogy first purist type of person. I know that sounds off-putting, considering everything going on in the world. But the original trilogy is always my baby, the very first thing, the best thing about Star Wars to me, even though there's been many great things in the recent years that I love about Star Wars that they've produced, especially, Clone Wars and Andor and so many of the Disney Plus stuff, so much of the Disney stuff, yes, much like this trilogy. And I actually enjoy this trilogy a lot. Never beats the original, of course, and I even have some love for the prequel trilogy. Not as much, but I can appreciate it for what it is, especially because I know that it brought some people into a love of Star Wars. That's, to me, if we can share a love of Star Wars at any level, for any reason, that is a beautiful, wonderful thing. How have we lost that? I can't say we have. There's a group that I joined, I mostly lurk on on Facebook, and it's a lot of good people, that share a lot of really positive, wonderful experiences with Star Wars, and it's a good group to be a part of. They're non-toxic. I'm not going to necessarily just start recommending stuff offhand, because it might draw awful people into it, but you might be able to gather from my words what that name of that group might be. So, and I do have notes that you'll see me glancing to every once in a while, just so I can get my stuff together in my head, so I don't miss anything or ramble further. Anyway, I did that, by the way. Okay. The cast. It's no big surprise. We got Mark Hamill. We got Carrie Fisher in her last actual Star Wars performance, rather than borrowed footage and put into Rise of Skywalker. There's even a dedication for her at the end. I was in Orlando for Star Wars Celebration when we were all basically in tears watching John Williams play her theme. I still get goosebumps at that moment. It's to me, this is a transformative film, not just for these characters, for this trilogy. It is, without a doubt, the best of the trilogy. I love JJ, yes, but this is easily the best of the 3 films in the sequel trilogy. And thus, many of you might say, well, that's not a high bar. Well, who cares? I know I don't want to be dismissive of other people's opinions, but honestly, a lot of people just have I know that a lot of people have just a knee-jerk reaction to this trilogy, or this film in particular, because they feel that everything was wrong with it. I even actually had not just an internet conflict many years ago, but a face-to-face conflict with other fans. After seeing Rian Johnson in person a number of years ago, talking about his new movie Knives Out in Hollywood, and I went to a certain bar afterwards and had a discussion with some people, and it was a real difficult conversation to have with people who I think they were good people, but it was still the idea that I think they just bought into the garbage that was being spewed out there. When let's just say, in time, there will not be more people suddenly going, you know what, that was a good movie, but now I believe it's awful. We're going to find more and more people as time goes on going from, that movie was awful, to, that's a classic. This literally is, if you step back from it, it's not just the story, continuing the saga. It doesn't just touch on the classic characters in relation to these new ones like Rey and Finn and Poe and BB-8. It looks at Star Wars, and it actually looks at Star Wars fandom to another level. Star Wars itself, in my mind, in many fans' minds, in Rian Johnson's minds, is elevated beyond most people's understanding of film. And the Star Wars films, in relation to the rest of all film in history, is not great. They're not the greatest films in that sense, but they are the greatest films to fans like us who grew up. We are fueled by nostalgia, what we connected with as children, and we enjoy those things regardless of whether they're good or bad. For me, a lot of the times, I can't really even pass judgment. To a certain degree, yes, I can say, well, that was a bad choice, or that was a good choice, or that maybe it was interesting to me, or not. But in many cases, if I can just swim around in the Star Wars universe, I'm happy. The fact that this is what I think pissed off a lot of people with Star Wars, The Last Jedi. And just the sequel trilogy as well, because, and this even goes back a little bit to the prequel trilogy, but even more so in this day of social media and everything else, because we didn't have social media to the degree, maybe we had did we have Friendster yet in 1999? Or we had like Friendster and MySpace and things like that by the time Attack of the Clones came out, and AOL Instant Messenger and stuff like that. But when people could profit off of their toxicity, it just went out of control. In a time when being toxic at every level of society, I'm not going to get political, was just sort of a fashion statement. My generation prided itself on knowing everything about Star Wars. There is not a thing you could have said to us about Star Wars that we didn't know. Just the most dumbest minutia. Yes, it was expanded universe stuff that was written in a book that was never mentioned in a movie. Characters had names that were never said aloud, but this ended up in a role-playing game book or a video game or a novel that has since been disavowed. Made legacy. And that's great. And some of that stuff stuck. And some of that has been adopted and brought into the modern, more cohesive, managed cinematic universe of Star Wars. And that's actually a good thing, because do we really need a really awkward sort of romance book involving Luke and Leia written before Empire Strikes Back? No, we don't need that. That's not part of how all that stuff would conflict. Anyway, I'm getting off track. But the point is, we knew everything that mattered about Star Wars. And we gave up hope that there would be anything new that was canon, that was something that mattered. Yeah, little boy, I remember having a book full of trivia that I memorized, written by a kid my age back in 1981, 82, 83, something like that. He knew everything. And because of that, the rest of us knew everything. Growing up, we knew everything. And I think the biggest fear, and this brings out the fact that we realize we're getting older, is with these new movies, it shows we don't know everything. One of the most toxic elements of being an obsessive geek about anything, not just Star Wars, is that we feel like we need to gatekeep anybody else who's new to it. It happens in music too. I've people that have said, "Oh, you like that band, do you? Just because the latest album I happened to hear, as compared to I did not hearing the first 3 albums, and so I'm not a real fan because I didn't listen to them from the start when they were nobody." It happens in music. It happens in movies, especially when it comes to sagas and things like this. We feel threatened when something along this line comes out, when this movie comes out, and you cannot tell how it's going to end. I'm going to tell you this right now. There's a lot of people who watch this and assume they could understand the arc. If they would take some of the notes from The Force Awakens, JJ did mimic certain elements of the original Star Wars. It would make sense that maybe that Ryan would mimic certain elements of The Empire Strikes Back, and he did. The use of Yoda in a very important scene. The separating of the characters, our main characters, going off in different directions and following their different quests, making them weaker separate, making them more vulnerable separate, like they did in Empire Strikes Back. Han, Leia, Chewie, 3PO off on Bespin. Oh, Canto Bight. Or Luke heading off to meet Yoda. Oh, Rey going to find Luke. Oh, stuff like that. And then there's a little rebellion in this sense. There's also a little rebellion within the rebellion, with Poe questioning everything when his mentor Leia is taken out of commission. And I know that's a whole other thing for some people. I don't really want to get into the whole thing with some of the more detailed stuff, because either you love it or you hate it. If you understand, and actually you either understand it or you don't understand it. But the thing that frustrated a lot of people is that they didn't see certain things coming, and that pisses them off. It really makes them angry. Because if they didn't know already that Leia had Force abilities, they wouldn't have been surprised. They might have been able to handle the Mary Poppins sequence, or her using the Force to bring herself back into the ship after suddenly dying. They kind of wish that she had died in that explosion because Carrie had already died in real life. No, that's not the point. We needed Carrie for at least one reunion of the original cast members to bring her and Luke together in their final moments. Oh, and Luke dying? Yes. Somehow people were surprised by this and pissed off by it. Understand that this is not the early 90s. Our heroes, and this is another thing everybody's threatened by, our heroes are 40 years older than they were in 1977. And they were already in their 20s. Carrie a little bit younger, but, and Harrison, he was already in his 30s, but they're going to be older. And they have to reflect those characters. And we didn't necessarily have the technology that they're using in The Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett to depict Luke and Leia, and well, Luke, I should say, as younger. At this point, that just wasn't in the budget. And you're not going to necessarily get Mark Hamill out there walking around in 2017, and playing the younger version of himself, looking like a rickety CGI character. And I know in 2017, characters were not rickety, but in CGI, but they would in time. Even the stuff we're seeing in Mandalorian might look primitive 5 years from now. And that's understandable. It's just the way it is. But when it comes to depicting these characters at the stage that they are in their real life, if you're going to put these characters in a Star Wars movie, by the way, you couldn't have more Star Wars movies, a new sequel trilogy, without using the old characters, because everybody would rebel if you didn't put Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie and R2 and 3PO and Lando in these movies. They would freak out. You would have people going mad. How dare you make more Star Wars films without bringing back the original characters? But when you bring back the characters and you show them at the age that they are now, they're also angry, because you know what? It reflects just how old they are. It's sort of realize that you're an old man now, or an old woman now, you know? You may have saw this when you were 8, but you're 48 now. Or whatever you were at the time you first saw Star Wars. It's going to happen to the prequel kids eventually. They might already be feeling that by now, because they're 20 years older now themselves, since Attack of the Clones. So it's the kind of thing that, yes, the characters on screen reflected the age we did not want to feel. We want to feel young when we watch Star Wars. And to find Luke as a grizzled, dejected isolationist, well, even though that reflected the entire realities of Obi-Wan and Yoda in the original trilogy, well, yeah. There's a reason that, I mean, we all understand the reason why Luke went away, because of the conflict he had, the failure that he had when it came to Kylo Ren, came to Ben Solo. But he, and people, there's a whole contention with why. How could he have done that? Well, you know what? How could he have not done that? Luke, in the original trilogy, came so freaking close to turning to the dark side. Especially in Return of the Jedi. He was inches away from murdering Darth Vader. Not murdering, but killing him. Darth Vader was down. He was wailing away at him, chopping off his hand. Hearing the cackle of the Emperor, he was going to kill Vader. He was inches away from taking his place. And he stopped. He felt shame. He saw his own hand. He knew that he was easily tempted. And by the time he lost Kylo Ren, he was no longer buying his own BS, that he was the hero of the rebellion, that he was the great Jedi Master. He was, yes, a great Jedi Master, but he wasn't the be-all, end-all of the Jedi. Although, technically, after his failure, it seemed like that was the case. And maybe it was not destined that the Jedi come back. And he changed his mind. He transformed in those years that we didn't get to see. The Luke that we see in Book of Boba Fett and in The Mandalorian, and we might see again at some point, that Luke still has to grow. He's just building the temple to train Jedi. It's new. It's fresh. You read the comics that Marvel puts out, those are canon. You see Luke that's still struggling. It's right now they're doing the stuff from between Empire and Return of the Jedi. You see him with a borrowed lightsaber, basically, with a yellow tint to it, yellow color, kyber crystal. And he's still trying to understand the Force. He still has not defeated the Emperor and Darth Vader yet. In this, he's us. He's our age. He's very cynical. The way a lot of people, if you aren't this age already, you might not understand yet. I don't know. I know we want these space fantasies to give us hope and joy and everything else and make us feel good and about overcoming evil. But the great thing about this is that evil is overcome despite not having clear lines between good and evil. When we see Luke looking at everything he's done in the past, good and bad, he's dejected. He's at a lot. He's isolated. He's cut off from the Force, and he doesn't want to reconnect. He doesn't want to fail again. He feels that he would put the people he loves in harm's way by keeping on going. Keep going on with what he was doing before. He gave up. And that, yes, tossing the lightsaber away does two things. One, I'm done with the whole Jedi thing. And two, this is also not the symbol. A warrior's tool is not a symbol of what we need to defeat the evil in the galaxy, the First Order. Just like he threw away his lightsaber in the moment when he could have struck down Vader and the Emperor, maybe the Emperor, but Ryan peppers in so many references to, in fact, he references most of all Empire and Return of the Jedi, as if he was kind of creating in this 2.5-hour film. Yeah, it was 2 hours and 35 minutes. As if he was trying to make the last two films in the sequel trilogy, because in this process, he kills the big bad, supposedly, by Kylo Ren. We get to see good and evil joining forces and having one of the best lightsaber battles that we have in possibly all of Star Wars, at least the sequel trilogy. And then following that up with a sort of lightsaber battle at the end between Luke and Kylo. And people complain about that. They're just like, oh, Luke needed to kill his nephew. No, I don't care how bad my nephew or nieces or anything else is. If they're bad, even if it's the reason, if I'm the cause of it, even if they've hurt me, I'm not murdering children. I'm not, even if they're grown up and they're still jerks, I'm not killing people because they're bad. It's just, I'm nowhere close to a Jedi. Luke is a Jedi. But he sees through the lies of the Jedi, just like his father, Anakin. He understands with context. He knows the story and the history and everything else. He hasn't read all the books, obviously, and he holds the Jedi at least at one point as some great holy order. And he's like, oh, at one point he's when Rey leaves, questioning his usefulness, basically. He's ready to just burn down the library that holds all the secret books that he thinks still has the secret books in it. Rey took them. You can see that in the drawer of the Falcon before she takes off to meet Kylo. But Yoda destroys the tree before he even gets a chance to, because in a sense, he's telling Luke, it doesn't matter. These things, we set up these rules to think that, just like you've told Rey, the Force isn't there for the Jedi to use. It's for the Jedi to be used by the Force. And that is a tenet that's used in a number of different faiths and religions around our galaxy. So it's, yeah, when it comes to certain types of spiritualism, yeah, it's obviously that we are meant to be used by greater things than ourselves, not for us to take powers into our own hands to manipulate to our own ends. So, what else have I forgotten to say? I've said a lot here, and we're at 24 minutes already. Yeah, I talked about how we don't like not knowing ahead of time. Again, this is the thing that makes me a little bit different. As much as I'm a big fan of swimming in this galaxy. Like, again, if I get more Star Wars, I'm happy. I will reserve judgment of whether it's good or bad until after I've experienced it. I can swim around in it, and very often it takes a second viewing before I can really absolutely enjoy this. I saw this a number of times in the theaters, and the first viewing is always just sort of chaos to me. It's just a wall of information and just experiences and sound and light, and I'm a 7-year-old, again, just drinking it in. That's to me, that's wonderful. I can watch it a second time and go, oh, and relax and just take in the things I want to see and really feed on. And that's what this movie does for me so much. And I hope that it's the kind of thing that you, as if you're a Star Wars fan, if you're watching this as a Star Wars fan, always give yourself another chance to drink in, without preconceived notions of what you think the movie should be, the story should be, the characters should be, because it's not supposed to be what you want, because what you want is not what 1 billion other people want, 8 billion other people want. It's just the way it is. But Ryan very much had a very clear vision on how to depict Luke. Like I said a moment ago, and then I never followed up on it, if we got our wish back in the old days, in the 80s, when Return of the Jedi ended, we would have got another trilogy 3 years later, in the early 90s. We would have got the prequels. We would have got the whole story of Darth Vader. It would have been completely different. Maybe not, because, you know, it was George Lucas still would have probably been doing it, and we would have probably got the same thing, but the effects weren't there yet. And it wasn't until Jurassic Park that, when he saw that Steven had made, Steven Spielberg, I can just call him Steven. And when he saw that, he's like, oh, the technology is there now to create the world I want to see, completely on green screens. That I could see in another trilogy, the prequel, the story of Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader. And let's just say that trilogy built itself out in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Very different, probably more mullets. Although we did get a lot of mullets in the prequel trilogy, at least rat tails. But we would have got that, and who knows, we could have gotten the sequel trilogy before the end of the century. And it would have been a completely different thing too, because it might have still been George Lucas at the helm directing each one of them, or if we hadn't beat him to death with our opinions in an emerging internet about episode 1 and complaining about Jar Jar and everything else. And yes, those movies are very flawed. But honestly, in the greater scheme of things, of our world, of reality, guess what? It's just not a big deal. It really is. It's not a big deal. I just got a text there while I was doing this, and I got distracted as my brain was talking. Sorry. Anyway, things I love about this. I'm gonna go do specific scenes here, because I know I'm running really long on this one. I expected that, but I didn't want to just poop this out. So, scenes. Can't people complain about Canto Bite? Like, oh, what was the point of that? Again, it was not necessarily the point of, let's just send them on a thing. Honestly, each of these characters had to have something to do. Even though the films as a whole never properly used John Boyega as well as they could have, especially in Rise of Skywalker. And he made that very clear. And I agree with him on that. In this, also, it seems like he was off on another thing with a new character. Why can't I say her name? My brain is bad, and I hate myself for this. Because she's so controversial. Oh, no. Kelly Marie Tran, playing Rose. So, yeah, she's not controversial. She's a wonderful woman and a wonderful actress, and I'm glad she's in the Star Wars universe, and it's a good thing. It's sad that There are a lot of horrible people in this world that would take that joy away from her. I'm giving you the finger right now. Anyway, the Canto Bight storyline, again, it's expanding the universe. It's giving our characters, because again, the core of this story is Rey and Luke and Kylo Ren. That is the A story in this. The B story is going to be Poe dealing with trying to put his ego first, trying to take control of this whole thing, not understanding, you know, especially when, oh, sorry, I did go long, especially when Leia is taken out, incapacitated, he wants to be the boss. He thinks he knows the right way. And when a woman that he doesn't know just suddenly steps in, he feels he needs to know what's going on. And she just sort of laughs at him and is like, yeah, no, you don't. You don't need to know what's going on. We'll tell you as necessary. And that's honestly, that is kind of the relationship between Rian Johnson and the fans who need to know everything. I need to be informed because I need to be the most intelligent Star Wars fan in the room. No, you don't. I would love to be, but I'm not. And honestly, I mean, I avoid spoilers whenever possible. So going into these films, other than watching the trailers, when going into these films, I don't watch making-ofs prior to the film or anything else. If I can avoid everything except for the official trailers, I will. Anytime somebody craps something out online, like, oh, whoa, this person appears in the movie, or, oh, like, they snuck the thing about Yoda appearing, or just other different BS. I don't want to know that. I want to be surprised in the moment. In fact, I've told this, a friend of mine, he and I have discussed this many times. If I see what's coming, like big things, big moments happening, if I see them coming, then I'm disappointed because I could have written it. I want to be surprised. If I'm expecting you to go left, but you go right, that's awesome. Or you go up instead, or diagonally, whatever. If you go a different direction than what I'm expecting, because I see the building blocks. I know the Joseph Campbell hero's journey kind of thing. I understand how all these things fit together. I've seen my share of thousands of movies. I know how these things work. I know how films are structured. But if you can surprise me with an element, and by the way, I'm completely, in some ways, I'm completely passive when I see these films, where I'm just, give it to me. And other times, I'm very active, where I'm engaged in every single pixel that's on the screen. It's digital projectors. So it's important for me to see these things, to be surprised. If you can turn something, and there's a lot of these in this. Whereas people, when they are surprised by things in these films, it just makes them angry. And that makes bad YouTube videos, other than this one, but it makes bad YouTube videos that nobody needs, just because they've ruined a character and ruined the franchise. No, it ruined it for you, not for everybody. Because you don't understand Star Wars, more than likely, or you don't understand character development, or you don't understand specifically Luke Skywalker. You see the action figure that you want to play with, and I understand that completely. I had them all, so I still do. But the idea is that, yeah, if, like, going back to the 90s thing, if we had seen these movies in the 90s, Luke Skywalker would not have been an angry loner. He would eventually have been, if they were still making 12 saga movies, he would eventually gotten to that point probably. But we would have seen him in these other eras of dealing with starting a school and fighting other villains, maybe meeting Mara Jade, who knows? It's still possible. But that's just the way it is. It's I've lost my track now. Luke and the lightsaber battle between Kylo, he is absolutely, it is not the most physical of lightsaber battles, but it is the most definitive of a Jedi. What we see of the Jedi back in the prequel trilogy, yes, those huge battles, freaking awesome, because you get all the Jedi and they're all fighting the clone troopers or the droids, battle droids and everything else. That made for some great visuals, and that's fun, and it's just crazy, and it's the dream of all of us who saw the original trilogy when Ben mentions the Clone Wars. What's the Clone Wars? Well, we finally got that in the original in the prequel trilogy and in the animated series, and that's freaking awesome. But the underlying story for George Lucas's thing has always been the Jedi defeated themselves in many ways. Not just Sidious manipulated all of them, of course, but they had been so compromised over the years that it made it easy for them to be compromised. Because they bought their own hype. And it's the same thing Luke felt for as he grew older. He believed he was the Jedi hero. And everybody saw him as that. And you hear him tell it to Rey how, I'm not buying my own BS anymore. I'm stepping away from it. And that's what makes him ineffective, for the most part. Until he finally, this film transforms him. And you say, well, maybe in Rise of the Jedi, he's completely different. He doesn't throw away the lightsaber, you know, is important, and it's like he's undoing what Ryan did. No, he didn't, because he changed. He had to die to change, but he still changed. There's transformation is allowed in these stories. It's essential, especially when it comes to Luke. Just because he has gone from, you know, to the point of being a recluse, the story is about him coming back from that. Rey helping, in a sense, redeem him and give him hope. Give the new hope again. And that's a wonderful story. So that's good. I don't know, I could talk about Snoke, but you know, Snoke was, you know, a red herring. It was just the way that it was meant to be. And it was still a great kill scene. Yeah, that was unexpected, and that was awesome. If he would have just been another Emperor, I mean, we got the Emperor in Rise of the Jedi, which, that's one of the big things for me. Was my biggest complaint is that while Ryan went out of his way to talk about how it's not about bloodlines and everything was made about bloodlines, that only the Skywalkers are the ones who can save the galaxy because now Ben Solo has turned to the dark side, so that legacy has been broken and Luke had ruined it, and it's all relying on a thing. That's why they said that Rey came from nobody, that her parents weren't important, that she is nobody. The point of that, and also the little broom boy at the end who had telekinetic Jedi powers, it's meant to say that you do not need to be a Skywalker in order to be important to the galaxy, in order to be a Jedi. Yes, they were the chosen ones, or whatever it is, and very much manipulated from the very beginning by Palpatine, Sidious, but heroes exist everywhere and at every level. That's the reason for Rose and Finn and Poe and all the way up to Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, BB-8. Heroes can be found anywhere. It doesn't matter where you come from or whose blood you have in your veins. We can all make a difference. That's kind of the thing. And then JJ went back and said, oh, by the way, you're a Palpatine, and now she chooses to be a Skywalker. So yeah, it's all about the legacy. And I get it. I understand it. I may not like it necessarily, but maybe in time I'll understand. I'll transform. I'll evolve into understanding and caring. This is a really long video. I realize this. I'm going to grab the rest of my notes so I can see them better. Wow, this is a whole page. And yeah, oh, by the way, Holdo maneuver. I know some people are like, oh, I've never used that before. Because we're not about sacrificing a very small resource of ships that they have intentionally while putting a person or even a droid to control it and just ramming ships at hyperspeed through other ships in order to destroy the Empire. Because once somebody figures out, they do it once, guess what? The Empire will do everything they can with their many, many resources to shut that crap down. Just the way it is. That's why it hasn't been used before, and it hasn't been used since. Anyway, I think I've said everything I can. I'm sure there's a billion more hours I could talk about this, just like every other person, good or bad, positive or negative, has talked about this film. And God knows we didn't need one more, but hey, the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge algorithm picked it for me, and I was going to watch it eventually. I only think I have 2 more, maybe 3, 2. I think I only have 2. I think I actually have the third of the last 2 trilogies to go. I have Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith. I think those are the only 2 saga films I have to watch yet, and that haven't been selected. So that's kind of wild. And I've talked a lot about this. So yeah, this is the kind of thing that I'll try to, if anybody actually does comment on this and disagrees with me, okay, I know I was flip and saying I don't care. And to a degree, I don't, but to another degree, opinions can be valid as long as they come from a genuine place where you're just not trying to be shitty. I understand each of us have our own tastes and understanding of certain things, and I realize I've probably been fairly shitty as well in this, and I know I've said shitty a lot in this one, more than any other video I've ever made, but this one has strong feelings. I have strong feelings for this movie. It is my favorite of the new trilogy. It is probably, yeah, it is one of my favorite Star Wars films of all time, and I think a lot more people will see that in time if they allow themselves to see the bigger picture. Not what they wanted, but what needed to be said and depicted with these characters. If you look at Luke, it is a logical progression of that character under the circumstances that he was put under and the life he lived. And to me, it's a beautiful thing. It just works out so well. Anyway, may the Force be with you. Let's pick tomorrow's episode.
370.
370. Okay, that's not a Star Wars thing. I don't think. Come on. Is my Wi-Fi down? Come on, let's go. I just loaded this a second ago. Okay, I gotta talk about Star Wars a little bit more, I guess. Anyway, yeah, now it's going to be going 45 minutes. Let's go. 370. This is, like I guess said, if you haven't seen this before, this is my color-coded list of currently 580 some things that I have yet to watch on Disney Plus. Okay, 370. That was the number. Now I've already forgotten. 370. All right, we got another documentary. Not sure what this is, but it looks like Savage Kingdom. Why is the colors really off on this? I feel really washed out right now. Did you see that Savage Kingdom? Yeah, that's it. Okay, Savage Kingdom. I'm guessing there's animals involved that are savage in a kingdom. Savage Kingdom is what we're watching next on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Bye. May the Force be with you. Okay, apparently there's something called Savage Kingdom on here. Maybe I just can't find it. I don't know. I searched. You can see I have Savage King in here so far, and all I'm getting is Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and everything else. So I guess I'm going to pick another one. This doesn't really happen unless it's so new that it hasn't really been added yet. I don't know. Either way, let's pick another number.
441.
Oh, 441. We are back in that realm. Oh, okay. Well, this is more documentary or reality or whatever it is. I know this is on here. So this is what we're watching next. Supernatural. Unless they took it off for some reason. That's what we're watching next. Super/natural on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. For real this time. May the Force be with you.